My name is Isabella Martinez, and I am 28 years old. 3 weeks ago, I received a phone call that would change everything. The Nobel Committee was awarding me the prize in chemistry for my groundbreaking work in sustainable energy solutions. But instead of celebrating with my family, I sat alone in my laboratory, remembering every cruel word they had spoken about my useless degree and fantasy career. What they did not know was that their betrayal had been far deeper than academic dismissal. And this moment would become the perfect stage for the justice they never saw coming. Now, before we dive into this wild family drama that literally made international headlines, I need to know, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments, because this story of family betrayal and scientific vindication is about to blow your mind. Hit that like button if you have ever been underestimated by people who should have supported you, and make sure to subscribe, because this revenge story has twists that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about family loyalty. Trust me, you will want to see how this Nobel Prize announcement became the ultimate mic drop moment. Growing up in a traditional Mexican-American family in Texas, I was always the odd one out. While my siblings pursued what my parents called respectable careers, my older brother Miguel became a lawyer, my sister Carmen went into finance. I was fascinated by chemistry from the age of 12. My parents Maria and Roberto Martinez owned a successful chain of restaurants and could not understand why their youngest daughter wanted to spend her life playing with test tubes instead of joining the family business or finding a husband. The dismissive comments started early. Mija, chemistry is not a real career for a woman, my mother would say, shaking her head when I showed her my science fair trophies. My father was even more direct. You are wasting our money on this fantasy. No one makes a living mixing chemicals. But I persisted, earning a full scholarship to MIT, then completing my PhD at Stanford, specializing in renewable energy storage solutions. For years, I endured family gatherings where my achievements were minimized. When I published my first major research paper in Nature, my brother Miguel laughed and said, "Great, another paper no one will read." When I landed a prestigious position at a leading research institute, Carmen rolled her eyes and muttered, "Still not making real money, though." The worst part was how they would introduce me to their friends. "This is Isabella, she is still in school," even though I had been working as a research scientist for 3 years. The breaking point came last Christmas. I had just received preliminary results that my revolutionary battery technology was showing unprecedented efficiency rates. I was excited to share the news with my family, thinking maybe this time they would understand the magnitude of what I was working on. Instead, my father delivered the most crushing blow yet. "Isabella, you are 28 years old," he said in front of the entire extended family gathered in our living room. "Your cousin Sophia just bought her second house with her nursing salary. Your friend Lucia from high school is a successful real estate agent with 3 kids. What do you have to show for all these years of education? Some papers that only 5 people in the world will ever read." The room fell silent. My aunts and uncles nodded in agreement. My mother added salt to the wound. "We are not getting any younger, mija. We want grandchildren, not more degrees. Maybe it is time to consider a career change. Carmen knows some people in her company who might give you an entry-level position." I felt my face burn with humiliation, but what happened next shattered something inside me. My brother Miguel pulled out his phone and started recording. "Say it again, Dad," he laughed. "Tell Isabella to get a real job. This is going on the family group chat." He was actually filming my public humiliation for entertainment. That night, I discovered something that made their mockery even more devastating. While using my father's computer to print my boarding pass for my flight back to California, I accidentally opened his email. What I found made my blood run cold. For the past 2 years, my father had been intercepting calls and emails from journalists, science magazines, and even documentary filmmakers who wanted to interview me about my research. He had been declining them all without telling me. One email thread was particularly damning. A producer from National Geographic had reached out 6 months earlier about featuring my work in a documentary about young innovators changing the world. My father had responded, "My daughter is not interested in publicity. She is reconsidering her career path and focusing on more traditional pursuits." He had stolen opportunities that could have advanced my career and gotten my research the recognition it deserved, but the worst discovery was yet to come. Buried in his sent folder was an email to my PhD advisor at Stanford from 3 years ago. My father had contacted Dr. Williams pretending to be concerned about my mental health, suggesting that I was obsessed with my research to an unhealthy degree, and asking if the program offered counseling services. He had actually tried to sabotage my academic standing by planting seeds of doubt about my psychological fitness. The email read, "Professor Williams, I am writing as Isabella's father because I am deeply concerned about her well-being. She seems to have no life outside of her laboratory work and has become increasingly isolated from family and social situations. As her parent, I worry that this obsessive focus on her research is indicative of underlying mental health issues. Does your program have resources to help students who may be struggling with work-life balance? I believe Isabella would benefit from professional guidance to help her develop more realistic career expectations." I sat in that chair, staring at the screen, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. My own father had tried to convince my professor that I was mentally unstable. He had deliberately undermined my professional relationships and stolen career opportunities, all while publicly mocking my achievements. This was not just unsupportive family behavior. This was active sabotage. The betrayal cut deeper than any cruel comment ever could. I realized that their dismissiveness was not just cultural misunderstanding or generational differences. They had been actively working against my success because my achievements made them uncomfortable. My mother later confirmed my suspicions when I confronted her the next morning. "Your father was trying to protect you," she said defensively. "All this science stuff has made you weird and antisocial. We just want you to have a normal life like other women your age." "Protect me from what?" I demanded. "From wasting your life," she replied without hesitation. "From becoming one of those bitter career women who end up alone with cats and regrets." That conversation was the moment I realized my family did not just misunderstand my choices. They actively feared and resented my success. They were threatened by the idea that I might achieve something beyond their comprehension, something that would prove their traditional values were not the only path to fulfillment. Their sabotage was not about concern for my happiness. It was about maintaining their own sense of superiority and control. I flew back to California that day with a heart full of resolve. If my family wanted to play games with my career, they were about to learn that they had underestimated exactly who they were dealing with. The girl they had dismissed and undermined was about to become someone the whole world would know. The flight back to California gave me 6 hours to process the magnitude of my family's betrayal. As I sat in that cramped airplane seat, I made a decision that would change everything. I was not going to waste energy on anger or hurt feelings. Instead, I was going to channel every ounce of my pain into proving them spectacularly wrong. The first thing I did when I returned to my laboratory was call Dr. Williams, my former PhD advisor. I needed to know exactly what damage my father's email had caused. Dr. Williams was shocked when I told him about the intercepted communications. "Isabella, I never took your father's concerns seriously," he assured me. "In fact, I found his email rather odd. Your work ethic and focus were among your greatest strengths. I actually meant to mention it to you, but got caught up in semester preparations and forgot. If anything, that email made me worry about your home situation, not your mental health." That conversation gave me crucial insight. My father's sabotage had not worked, but it revealed just how far he was willing to go to undermine me. I realized I needed to be strategic about protecting my career from future interference. I changed all my contact information and set up a separate professional email account that my family could never access. I also informed my colleagues and research partners about potential communication issues with my family. But my real focus was on the research itself. The battery technology I had been developing was showing results that even I had not anticipated. The energy storage capacity was exceeding theoretical maximums, and the sustainability metrics were off the charts. I knew I was on the verge of something revolutionary, but I needed to be absolutely certain before making any announcements. I threw myself into my work with an intensity that surprised even my research team. Dr. Sarah Chen, my closest colleague, noticed the change immediately. "Isabella, you are working 18-hour days. What is driving this sudden intensity?" I could not tell her about the family situation. The humiliation was still too fresh. But I channeled my emotions into explanation. "Sarah, I have spent my entire career being told that my work does not matter, that chemistry is not a real profession, that I am wasting my time and education. Every successful experiment is proof that those people were wrong." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Family pressure?" "Something like that," I replied, not ready to reveal the full extent of the betrayal. What I did not tell Sarah was that I had begun documenting everything. Every successful test, every breakthrough, every peer review and citation was being carefully recorded. I was building an irrefutable case that my work was not only legitimate, but groundbreaking. I started reaching out to science journalists, directly rebuilding the professional networks my father had damaged. The response was overwhelming. Dr. Jennifer Park from Science magazine was particularly enthusiastic. "Isabella, your research has been on our radar for months. We tried to contact you several times last year, but never heard back. We would love to feature your work in our Emerging Scientists series." I explained the communication issues without going into family details, and Dr. Park was understanding. Soon, I had interviews lined up with Scientific American Nature and several international publications. Each conversation reinforced what I was beginning to understand. My work was not just good, it was potentially world-changing. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening in February. After months of refinement, my battery prototype achieved something that energy storage experts had deemed impossible. The efficiency rates were so high that I ran the test 17 times before believing the results. This was not just an incremental improvement. This was a complete revolution in sustainable energy storage. I called my research partner, Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, at midnight. "Amanda, you need to get to the lab. I think we just solved the global energy storage problem." When Amanda saw the results, she sat down hard in the nearest chair. "Isabella, do you understand what this means? This technology could replace lithium-ion batteries in everything from cell phones to electric car manufacturers. This could accelerate the transition to renewable energy by decades." That night, as we celebrated our breakthrough with terrible laboratory coffee and stale donuts, I made a decision about my family. I was not going to tell them anything. Not about the media attention, not about the potential patents, and certainly not about the Nobel Prize nomination that Dr. Rodriguez insisted we should pursue. "My family thinks chemistry is a waste of time," I told Amanda. "They are going to find out exactly how wrong they were, but it will be on my terms in my time." Amanda looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Isabella, this discovery is going to make international news. You cannot keep this secret forever." "I am not keeping it secret," I clarified. "I am just not sharing it with people who have spent years trying to convince me it was worthless." Over the following weeks, everything accelerated. Patent applications were filed, peer review processes began, and the scientific community started buzzing about our discovery. My phone rang constantly with interview requests, collaboration offers, and speaking engagements. The girl my family had dismissed as antisocial was suddenly one of the most sought-after voices in renewable energy. The irony was not lost on me. While my family had been pressuring me to abandon my fantasy career for something more realistic, I had been quietly developing technology that would eventually be worth billions of dollars and could help solve climate change. Every condescending comment they had made was aging like milk in the sun. But I maintained radio silence. When my mother called asking why I had not visited for Easter, I gave vague excuses about work commitments. When Miguel texted asking if I was still playing scientist, I did not respond. Let them think I was sulking about Christmas. They had no idea that their awkward unmarried daughter was about to become one of the most famous scientists in the world. The call came on a Monday morning in October. I was reviewing research data when my phone rang with an international number. The voice on the other end was formal and precise. Dr. Martinez, this is Dr. Eric Johansson from the Nobel Committee. We would like to discuss your recent work in sustainable energy storage. My hands started shaking as Dr. Johansson explained that my research had been selected for the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. The official announcement would be made in 3 weeks, followed by the ceremony in Stockholm in December. I would be the youngest woman ever to receive the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the universe had just handed me the perfect opportunity for the most epic family reckoning in history. My relatives, who had mocked my useless degree, were about to learn that their daughter, sister, and niece was now Dr. Isabella Martinez, Nobel laureate. The 3 weeks between the Nobel Committee's call and the public announcement were the most surreal of my life. I was sitting on the biggest secret in the scientific world, while my family continued their pattern of dismissive behavior. The contrast was almost comical. During the day, I was fielding calls from world leaders and multinational corporations wanting to license my technology. And in the evenings, I was receiving text messages from my mother, asking when I planned to get serious about life. I decided to use this time strategically. If I was going to orchestrate the ultimate revelation, I needed allies who understood the full magnitude of what was happening. My first call was to Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, my research partner, who had been with me through every breakthrough. Amanda, I need to tell you something that you cannot repeat to anyone. I began, my voice barely containing my excitement. When I told her about the Nobel Prize, she literally dropped her coffee mug. The crash echoed through her laboratory as she stared at me in shock. Isabella, are you serious right now? The Nobel Prize in Chemistry? Dead serious. The announcement is in 2 weeks. But here's the thing. My family has no idea. They still think I am wasting my life on meaningless research. Amanda's expression shifted from shock to something resembling mischievous delight. Oh my God, Isabella! This is going to be incredible. What are you planning? I explained my family's years of sabotage and mockery, including my father's attempts to undermine my academic relationships. Amanda's face grew increasingly serious as she understood the depth of the betrayal. By the end of my story, she was furious on my behalf. They tried to sabotage your PhD. That is unforgivable. Isabella, you have every right to make this revelation as public and dramatic as possible. Amanda became my first co-conspirator, but I needed more allies for what I was planning. My next recruit was Dr. Sarah Chen, the colleague who had noticed my increased intensity months earlier. When I told Sarah about the Nobel Prize and the family situation, her reaction was immediate. Isabella, this is justice in its purest form. Your family spent years trying to convince you that your work was worthless, and now you are receiving the highest honor in science. This is not just personal vindication. This is cosmic justice. Sarah had an idea that was pure genius. You know what would make this even better? Document everything. Film their reactions when they find out. This story is so incredible that it could inspire other young scientists who are dealing with family pressure to abandon their dreams. The idea of documenting the revelation excited me more than I expected. This was not just about personal revenge. This was about showing the world what happens when families try to crush scientific ambition. Sarah volunteered to help coordinate the logistics of filming while maintaining secrecy. My third ally came from an unexpected source. Dr. Jennifer Park from Science magazine called to follow up on our previous interview about my battery technology. During our conversation, I mentioned that I had some exciting news coming soon, but could not share details yet. Something in my tone must have intrigued her because she pressed for more information. Jennifer, if I told you that I was planning to reveal something that would completely vindicate years of family skepticism about my career, would you be interested in covering it? Isabella, that sounds like exactly the kind of human interest story our readers love. Scientists overcoming adversity and proving doubters wrong. That is compelling journalism. I explained the situation without revealing the Nobel Prize details, and Jennifer was fascinated. This could be a powerful story about supporting young women in STEM fields. Would you be open to exclusive coverage of whatever this revelation turns out to be? More than open, I replied. I think Science magazine readers would find this story very relatable. With my media allies secured, I turned to the most important recruitment of all, my extended professional network. The Nobel Prize announcement would generate massive international attention, but I wanted to amplify it specifically for my family's benefit. I reached out to former classmates who now worked in science communication colleagues at other research institutions, and even some professors from my undergraduate days. The response was overwhelming. Dr. Michael Torres, my undergraduate chemistry professor, was thrilled to hear from me. When I hinted that something big was coming and asked if he would be willing to help amplify positive news about my career on social media, he was immediately supportive. Isabella, you were one of my most promising students ever. I always knew you would accomplish something extraordinary. Whatever this announcement is, count on my full support. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a former classmate who now directed science outreach at a major university, had a particularly valuable suggestion. Isabella, if this is as big as you are hinting, you should consider the educational impact. A lot of young Latina scientists face exactly the kind of family pressure you described. Your success story could change lives. Elena's words added a new dimension to my planning. This was not just about personal vindication. This was about representation and inspiration for other young women from traditional families who were pursuing non-traditional careers. The weight of that responsibility was both exciting and terrifying. As the announcement date approached, I made one final strategic decision. I was going to attend the family dinner that my mother had been planning for the weekend after the Nobel announcement. She had called the previous week insisting that I come home because the whole family misses me, and they wanted to have a serious conversation about my future. Perfect timing could not have been scripted better. Of course, Mama, I told her over the phone. I have some news to share with everyone anyway. Good news, I hope, she replied, with that tone that suggested she was expecting me to announce either a career change or an engagement. Life-changing news. I confirmed, which was the absolute truth. The final piece of my strategy involved social media coordination. Sarah had helped me create a comprehensive timeline of posts that would go live immediately after the Nobel announcement. We had prepared Twitter threads, Instagram posts, and Facebook updates that would tell the complete story of my family's sabotage and my ultimate vindication. The goal was not just to shame them, but to create a public record of what happens when families fail to support their children's ambitions. Amanda suggested we also prepare responses to the inevitable media attention that would follow. Isabella, once this story goes viral, and it will go viral, reporters are going to want quotes from your family. You should be ready for their response. I had thought about this extensively. My family would likely try to rewrite history, claiming they had always been supportive or that their concerns had been misunderstood. I was not going to let them escape accountability that easily. Every email my father had sent, every recording Miguel had made of my humiliation, every condescending comment my mother had made, I had documentation of all of it. Dr. Jennifer Park called 2 days before the announcement with final preparations for her exclusive story. Isabella, I have been researching your background, and this story is even more powerful than I initially thought. You are going to be the youngest woman ever to win the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and you did it while overcoming significant family opposition. This is front-page material. Jennifer, I want to make sure the story emphasizes the broader implications. This is not just about me getting revenge on my family. This is about what happens when we do not support young scientists, especially women and minorities, in pursuing their dreams. Absolutely. Your story represents something much larger than personal family drama. This is about recognizing and nurturing scientific talent regardless of traditional expectations. As I hung up the phone, I realized that everything was in place. In 48 hours, the world would know that Isabella Martinez, the daughter dismissed as a dreamer, wasting her life on fantasy science, was actually Dr. Isabella Martinez, Nobel laureate in chemistry. The girl they had tried to sabotage was about to become one of the most celebrated scientists on Earth. The anticipation was almost unbearable, but I was ready. Justice was coming, and it was going to be beautiful. The morning of October 15th arrived with crisp autumn air, and the kind of clarity that comes with knowing your life is about to change forever. I woke up at 5 a.m., not because of my alarm, but because my body was humming with anticipation. Today, the Nobel Committee would announce the chemistry prize winners, and by evening, the world would know my name. I had orchestrated every detail of this moment. Amanda was stationed at her computer with our social media timeline ready to deploy. Sarah had cameras positioned strategically around my apartment to capture my reaction to the news. Dr. Jennifer Park from Science magazine was on standby for exclusive quotes. Even my undergraduate professor, Dr. Torres, was prepared to amplify the announcement across academic networks. At exactly 9 a.m. Stockholm time, my phone rang with the official call I had been expecting for 3 weeks. Dr. Martinez, this is Dr. Erik Johansson from the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. On behalf of the Nobel Committee, I am honored to inform you that you have been awarded this year's Nobel Prize in Chemistry for your revolutionary work in sustainable energy storage solutions. I delivered my practiced response with genuine emotion. Dr. Johansson, I am deeply honored and humbled by this recognition. This award represents not just my work, but the importance of supporting young scientists in pursuing ambitious research goals. Within minutes of hanging up, my phone exploded with notifications. The Nobel Committee's official announcement had gone live, and the scientific community was erupting with excitement. Youngest woman ever to win Nobel Prize in Chemistry was trending across multiple platforms. My carefully orchestrated social media timeline launched automatically, telling the story of family sabotage and ultimate vindication in real time. The first post read, "Today I learned that the girl my family called antisocial and obsessed just won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry." Funny how wasting my life on fantasy science turned into changing the world. Sometimes the people who should support you most are the ones who understand you least. Amanda called, screaming with excitement. "Isabella, Twitter is going insane. Your story is being retweeted by everyone from Neil deGrasse Tyson to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The hashtag family said get a real career is trending globally. But the real satisfaction came from watching my family's reaction unfold in real time. My cousin Sophia was the first to see the news posting on the family group chat. Guys, is this our Isabella on CNN right now?" Miguel's response was priceless. "What are you talking about? Isabella does not go on TV." Then Carmen chimed in with a screenshot from the Nobel Committee's website. "Miguel, your sister just won the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Prize." My mother called 17 times in the first hour. I let every call go to voicemail, but I listened to each message with growing amusement. The progression from confusion to panic to desperate pride was exactly what I had anticipated. "Mija, we saw the news." Why did you not tell us? We are so proud of you. Call me back immediately. Then, Isabella, people are calling asking about you. I do not understand what is happening. Please, call your mother. Finally, your father is crying. He says he always knew you were special. We need to talk about this family dinner this weekend. Everyone wants to celebrate. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. My father, who had spent years sabotaging my career and calling my work worthless, was suddenly crying with pride. The man who had intercepted media opportunities and tried to convince my PhD advisor that I was mentally unstable was now claiming he always knew I was special. Dr. Jennifer Park's exclusive story went live 2 hours after the Nobel announcement, and it was devastating. She had titled it, "The Nobel Laureate They Tried to Silence How Family Sabotage Nearly Derailed a Scientific Revolution." The article included direct quotes from my father's emails attempting to undermine my academic standing, descriptions of the Christmas humiliation video, and documentation of the intercepted media opportunities. The public response was swift and overwhelming. The comment section filled with stories from other scientists who had faced family pressure to abandon their research. Young women shared experiences of being told their STEM careers were unwomanly or impractical. The article was shared over 50,000 times in the first day, sparking conversations about supporting ambitious young people instead of crushing their dreams. But the most satisfying moment came when Miguel tried to damage control on social media. He posted on Facebook, "So proud of my baby sister Isabella for winning the Nobel Prize. Our family has always supported her dreams, and we knew she would accomplish great things." The internet was not having it. Within hours, someone had found and shared the video he had recorded of my Christmas humiliation. The contrast between his mocking laughter in the video and his proud brother act on Facebook was so stark that it became a meme. Screenshots comparing his old and new posts went viral with captions like, "Family support looking different these days," and "The audacity is strong with this one." Carmen attempted her own revisionist history. "Isabella has always been the smartest one in our family. We are incredibly proud of everything she has accomplished through her hard work and dedication." But Amanda had been documenting everything. We had screenshots of every dismissive text message, every condescending comment, every time they had introduced me as "still in school" to their friends. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The cherry on top came when my father tried to give an interview to our local newspaper about raising a Nobel Prize winner. The reporter who had done her research asked pointed questions about the intercepted media opportunities and the emails to Stanford. My father stumbled through non-answers before eventually hanging up. The resulting article, titled "Nobel Winner's Father Struggles to Explain Years of Career Sabotage," was picked up by national outlets. By evening, I had received interview requests from every major news network, collaboration offers from Fortune 500 companies, and speaking invitations from universities around the world. The antisocial girl, who supposedly had no life outside her laboratory, was suddenly one of the most sought-after voices in science. The most meaningful response came from Dr. Elena Vasquez, my former classmate who directed science outreach. She called to tell me that her program had received dozens of messages from young Latina students who said my story had inspired them to pursue chemistry despite family pressure to choose more practical careers. "Isabella, you have no idea how powerful your story is for representation. You are showing young women that they can pursue ambitious scientific careers even when their families do not understand or support them." As I prepared for bed that night, I reflected on the day's events. The Nobel Prize was an incredible honor, but the real satisfaction came from proving my family spectacularly wrong in the most public way possible. They had spent years trying to convince me that my work was worthless, and I had responded by becoming one of the most celebrated scientists on Earth. Tomorrow, I would face them at the family dinner they had planned. But now, instead of defending my career choices, I would be arriving as Dr. Isabella Martinez, Nobel Laureate. The conversation was going to be very different from what they had originally intended. The family dinner was scheduled for Sunday at 6 p.m., exactly 48 hours after the Nobel announcement had turned my world upside down. I arrived at my parents' house in my Honda Civic, the same car my family had mocked as evidence that my fake career was not financially viable. The irony was delicious. By Monday, I would have collaboration offers worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but tonight I was pulling up in my modest vehicle to face the people who had spent years crushing my confidence. My mother answered the door with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of pride, panic, and desperate damage control. "Mija, we are so proud of you. Why did you not tell us about the Nobel Prize? We could have planned a proper celebration." "I wanted it to be a surprise," I replied with perfect calm. "You always said I should focus on more realistic achievements. I thought you would appreciate something concrete." The entire extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and several family friends who had witnessed my Christmas humiliation 9 months earlier. The atmosphere was charged with tension and awkwardness. Everyone wanted to congratulate me, but they all remembered their previous dismissive comments about my career. My father approached with tears in his eyes, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Isabella, I am so proud of what you have accomplished. I always knew you were destined for greatness." "Did you?" I asked quietly. "Because I have emails that suggest otherwise." His face went pale. He knew exactly what emails I was referring to. Miguel tried to break the tension with forced enthusiasm. "My Nobel Prize-winning sister, this is incredible. We should take pictures for social media." "Like the video you took at Christmas?" I asked sweetly. "The one where you filmed Dad telling me to get a real job? That was good social media content too." The room fell silent. Every family member who had been present that day suddenly found their plates very interesting. Carmen attempted to redirect. "Isabella, tell us about your research. We want to understand what you have been working on all these years." "Now you want to understand?" I replied. For 9 years, every time I tried to explain my work, I was told it was too complicated, too impractical, or too boring for normal people to care about. What changed? My Aunt Rosa, who had always been particularly vocal about my need to find a husband instead of hiding in laboratories, tried to smooth things over. "We were just worried about your happiness, mija. We wanted you to have a normal life with a family." "I am happy," I responded. "I am happier than I have ever been. I wake up every day knowing that my work is changing the world. I collaborate with brilliant scientists across the globe. I have discoveries that will outlive me by centuries. I have exactly the life I wanted, despite years of people telling me it was impossible." My mother jumped in desperately. "We just did not understand your work, Isabella. We come from a different generation. We were trying to protect you from disappointment." This was my moment. I had been waiting 9 months for this exact conversation. "Protect me from disappointment, Mama, let me tell you about disappointment. Disappointment is discovering that your father spent years intercepting calls from journalists who wanted to interview me. Disappointment is learning that he contacted my PhD advisor to suggest I was mentally unstable. Disappointment is realizing that the people who should have been my biggest supporters were actively sabotaging my career." I pulled out my phone and began reading from my father's email to Dr. Williams. The room was dead silent as I recited his words about my unhealthy obsession and unrealistic career expectations. "This email was sent 3 years ago while I was developing the research that just won the Nobel Prize," I continued. "While I was working 18-hour days to solve energy storage problems that could help save the planet, my own father was trying to convince my professor that I was having a mental breakdown." My father's face crumpled. "Isabella, I was worried about you. You seemed so isolated, so focused on work that we could not understand. I thought maybe you needed help finding balance." "Balance." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You thought the problem was that I was too dedicated to my research, Dad. My obsessive focus just revolutionized sustainable energy storage. My isolation was actually collaboration with the greatest scientific minds of our generation. My unrealistic career expectations just earned me the highest honor in chemistry. Uncle Carlos, who had always been skeptical of educated women, tried to defuse the situation. "Well, we know better now. We are all very proud of you, Isabella." "Are you proud of me, or are you proud of the recognition I received?" I asked. "Because my work has not changed since Christmas when you were all laughing at Dad's jokes about my fantasy career. The only thing that changed is that the Nobel Committee validated what I was already doing." Carmen attempted damage control. "Isabella, we love you. Family is family. We made mistakes, but we can move forward together." "Can we?" I replied. "Because right now, reporters are calling asking about my family's reaction to the Nobel Prize. What should I tell them? Should I mention the years of mockery, the intercepted career opportunities, the Christmas video that Miguel posted in the family group chat for laughs? The mention of media attention sent visible panic through the room. They were beginning to understand that their private family dynamics were now public interest stories. "You would not humiliate your family in the press," my mother said uncertainly. "I already did," I replied matter-of-factly. Science magazine published a comprehensive article about my journey yesterday. It includes direct quotes from Dad's emails and detailed descriptions of the family pressure I faced to abandon my research. The story has been shared over 100,000 times. The color drained from my mother's face. "You told strangers about our private family business." I told the truth about how families can damage young scientists by failing to support their ambitions. Your private family business has become a case study in what not to do when your child pursues an unconventional career. Miguel pulled out his phone, clearly searching for the article. When he found it, his expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Isabella, there are comments calling us terrible people. People are saying we do not deserve to be related to you." "That is unfortunate," I replied without emotion. "Maybe you should have thought about that before spending years trying to crush my confidence and sabotage my career." The dinner continued for another hour, but the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. I was no longer the family disappointment defending my choices. I was Dr. Isabella Martinez, Nobel laureate, holding them accountable for years of betrayal and mockery. They wanted forgiveness and family unity, but I was not ready to provide either. As I prepared to leave, my father made one last desperate attempt. "Isabella, we are family. We love you despite our mistakes. Can you forgive us?" I looked around the room at faces that had once made me feel small and inadequate. Forgiveness is earned, not demanded. And right now, I have a Nobel Prize acceptance speech to write and a world to change. Family dinners are no longer my priority. 6 months after the Nobel announcement, I was sitting in my new office at the Martinez Institute for Sustainable Energy Research. Yes, they named it after me. When Dr. Amanda Rodriguez knocked on my door with a familiar, mischievous smile. "Isabella, you need to see this," she said, handing me her tablet. "Your mother just posted on Facebook about attending a community event where she introduced herself as the Nobel Prize winner's mother. The comments are interesting." I scrolled through the responses to my mother's post. The local community members were polite but pointed in their replies. Several people mentioned having read the Science magazine article. Others shared their own stories of family members who had discouraged their educational pursuits. One comment particularly stood out. "Mrs. Martinez, I remember you telling my mother that Isabella was wasting her life in college." Funny how perspectives change when the world validates what we should have supported all along. The public accountability had been swift and comprehensive. My family's attempt to rewrite history and claim credit for my success had backfired spectacularly. The documentation I had provided to journalists created an undeniable record of their sabotage. They could not escape the consequences of their actions by simply claiming they had always been supportive. "How do you feel about all this?" Amanda asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. 6 months ago, you were the family disappointment. Now you are one of the most influential scientists in the world, and they are dealing with public scrutiny of their behavior. I considered her question carefully. The honest answer was complex. I feel vindicated, obviously. Every prediction they made about my future was wrong. Every concern they expressed about my career was misguided. But I also feel sad about what we lost. They could have been part of this journey from the beginning. They could have celebrated each breakthrough, each publication, each recognition. Instead, they chose to be obstacles. The transformation in my life had been remarkable. The Nobel Prize had opened doors I never could have imagined. Technology companies were licensing my battery innovations for billions of dollars. Universities across the world were offering me positions and research funding. I had been invited to speak at the United Nations about sustainable energy solutions. The girl my family had dismissed as antisocial was now a global advocate for climate change solutions. But the most meaningful change was the family I had chosen to build. My research team had become my closest support system. Amanda was more of a sister to me than Carmen had ever been. Sarah understood my passion for discovery better than any blood relative ever had. Dr. Elena Vasquez had become a mentor and friend, helping me navigate the public speaking opportunities that came with international recognition. You know what I love most about your story? Dr. Elena had said during our last conversation. You did not let their limitations become your limitations. You proved that families do not get to define the scope of our ambitions. The ripple effects of my story continued to surprise me. The hashtag #FamilySaidGetARealCareer had evolved into a movement encouraging families to support young people pursuing unconventional paths. Universities were using my experience as a case study in science communication programs. Most importantly, I was receiving letters from young scientists around the world who said my story had given them courage to persist despite family pressure. One letter particularly moved me. A 22-year-old chemistry student from Mexico wrote, Dr. Martinez, my parents wanted me to quit my PhD program to get married and have children. After reading about your journey, I showed them your Nobel Prize acceptance speech. They finally understand that scientific careers can be as valuable as traditional paths. Thank you for showing us that our dreams matter even when our families do not understand them. My relationship with my biological family remained complicated. They had attempted reconciliation multiple times, but their approaches revealed ongoing fundamental misunderstandings about what they had done wrong. My mother's calls focused on public embarrassment rather than genuine remorse. My father's apologies centered on his intentions rather than the damage his actions had caused. Miguel and Carmen seemed primarily concerned about how their association with me could benefit their own social media presence. The breaking point came when my mother suggested I use my Nobel Prize platform to help repair the family's reputation in the community. The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted me to use my scientific achievements to clean up the mess created by their years of sabotage and mockery. Mama, I had told her during our last phone conversation, I am not responsible for managing the consequences of your choices. You spent years publicly dismissing my work. The public record of that behavior is not something I created or something I can fix. Instead of dwelling on family dysfunction, I channeled my energy into building something meaningful. The Martinez Institute was becoming a global leader in sustainable energy research. We were training the next generation of scientists in an environment that celebrated ambitious thinking and supported unconventional approaches to complex problems. Dr. Sarah Chen had joined as our Director of Innovation, bringing her expertise in science communication. Isabella, what you are building here is exactly what the scientific community needs. a place where young researchers can pursue groundbreaking work without fear of judgment or sabotage. The Institute's mission statement reflected everything I had learned from my family experience. We believe that scientific innovation requires environments of unconditional support, where researchers are encouraged to think beyond traditional limitations and pursue solutions that others might consider impossible. As I sat in my office that afternoon, reviewing applications from prospective research fellows, I realized that my family's betrayal had inadvertently created something beautiful. Their attempts to limit my potential had forced me to build strength and independence I might never have developed otherwise. Their failure to support my dreams had taught me exactly how to support other young scientists facing similar challenges. Amanda interrupted my reflection with exciting news. Isabella, the latest licensing deals for your battery technology just went through. The projected revenue over the next 5 years is approaching $2 billion. Remember when your family worried you would never make real money as a scientist? I laughed thinking about my father's concerns about my financial prospects. I should send him my portfolio statement. He might finally understand what sustainable energy storage solutions are worth in the global marketplace. But honestly, the money was secondary to the impact. My research was already being implemented in renewable energy projects across 6 continents. The technology that my family had dismissed as worthless fantasy was helping accelerate the global transition away from fossil fuels. Every solar installation and wind farm using my battery systems represented validation that my work mattered on a scale they had never imagined possible. The best part of this entire journey has been discovering that success tastes sweetest when it proves wrong the people who tried to convince you that your dreams were impossible. My family wanted me to get a real career, and I did. I became one of the most influential scientists of my generation. Have you ever had family members who tried to discourage your biggest ambitions? Have you experienced that moment when your success forced people who doubted you to completely reevaluate their assumptions? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below, because I know I am not the only person who has had to choose between family approval and personal dreams. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales about turning family skepticism into global success. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their unconventional path might lead to extraordinary destinations. Thank you for following my journey from family disappointment to Nobel laureate, and remember that sometimes the people who understand you least are the ones who motivate you most to prove them spectacularly wrong. Here is to choosing your dreams over other people's limitations and building the life that makes you proud, regardless of who believes in it along the way.